Welcome to the Explainer. So, we all know Japan is shrinking, but the real questions are how fast and why? In the next few minutes, we're going to dig into the official data that shows the startling speed of this decline. We'll explore the deep economic and social pressures that are just making it too hard for people to have kids. And then we'll zoom out and compare Japan to the rest of the world to see why its situation is, well, uniquely critical. Okay, let's get right into it. This quote really gets to the heart of it. The idea that Japan is disappearing, that's not meant to be some kind of dramatic overstatement. It's just math. It's a stark reality that's backed up by hard numbers and a structural shift that's reshaping the entire nation. So, where do we even begin? Well, to really get what's happening right now, we have to look at the whole picture, the entire story of Japan's population. And trust me, when you see the scale of this change laid out over time, it is staggering. Just look at this. Japan's population drew this massive arc, growing and growing until it peaked back in 2008 at over 128 million people. But ever since then, it's been in a steep and even accelerating decline. The projections are just wild. By the year 2100, the population could plummet all the way down to 63 million. We're talking about levels not seen since the late 1800s. Now let's talk about the engine of population growth, births. This number, 727,277. That's how many babies were born in Japan in 2023. It is the lowest number ever since they started keeping records back in 1899. To put that into perspective, it's barely a quarter of the babies born each year during the post-war baby boom. A quarter. And this is what happens when you subtract the births from the deaths. In 2023 alone, the population naturally decreased by almost 850,000 people. It's like an entire major city, poof, just vanished from the country in just 1 year. Okay, and this number is maybe the most important of all. This is the total fertility rate. Now here's what you need to know. For a population to just stay stable, you need a rate of about 2.1. Japan is at 1.20. That means the engine of population growth hasn't just stalled, it's gone completely cold. But, it's not just about having fewer people. That's only part of the story. The real kicker, the thing that puts a massive strain on the economy, is the fundamental shift in the age of the society. This is where things get really challenging. So, Japan is now what experts call a super-aged society. And what does that mean? Well, it means that today, nearly 1 in every 3 people is over the age of 65. 1 in 3. Meanwhile, the base of young people, those under 14, has shrunk to a tiny 12%. You can just see the imbalance. And I love this slide because it's such a perfect visual for the problem. See, back in its high-growth days, Japan had a tossed-in-the-air society. You had tons of workers easily supporting a small number of retirees. But now, it's becoming a piggyback ride society, where soon it'll be almost one worker carrying the entire economic burden of one retiree. And here's what that looks like when you graph it out. It's stark. The once stable, wide-based pyramid that looked kind of like Mount Fuji is morphing into this incredibly top-heavy, unstable coffin shape. And what that really means is that the country's entire economic foundation, its workers, its consumers, it's all shrinking from the bottom up. Okay, so we've seen the what. The numbers are pretty clear. Now for the really big question, why? Why is all this happening? It's easy to just say it's about personal choices, but the data points to some really powerful forces in the economy that are making it incredibly difficult for people to start families. And these aren't just vague trends. People are making very rational decisions in response to some deep structural problems in Japanese society. Let's break down the 3 big ones. First up, marriage. You have to understand, in Japan, having kids outside of marriage is extremely rare, like only 2% of births. So getting married is pretty much step 1 to having a family. But look at these numbers. The rate of people who never marry is at an all-time high. Nearly 1 in 3 men and almost 1 in 5 women reach age 50 without ever having been married. That has a direct, massive impact on the birth rate. And if you want a huge piece of the puzzle right here, it's the economic pressure. This number? That's the average price for a new condo in the Tokyo metro area. We're talking over $500,000 US. For young people trying to get started, that is a crushing, often just impossible burden. Now, you might be thinking, hey, lots of developed countries are getting older, right? And you'd be correct. But here's where we see why Japan's situation is uniquely severe. It's caught in a trap that most other countries have managed to avoid. Japan is definitely not alone in the low fertility club. I mean, look at South Korea. Its situation is even more dire. Italy is in a very similar boat. But then you see the USA, its rate is also falling, but it's still significantly higher. But hang on, because this is only half the story. And this is the slide that changes everything. This is the crucial difference. Unlike other advanced economies that use immigration as a sort of demographic release valve, Japan remains one of the most homogenous countries in the world. While over 14% of the US population is foreign-born, in Japan that number is a tiny 2.5%, one of the lowest in the developed world. And there you have it. That's the double bind. The population is shrinking from the inside, but there's almost no reinforcement coming from the outside to cushion the fall. It's a demographic decline without a safety net. So what does this all add up to? Well, when you put all these pieces together, it's clear that Japan is caught in this self-reinforcing cycle, this shrinking spiral. The very structure of its society is preventing it from regenerating itself. It's a vicious cycle, really. You start with crushing costs and a punishing work culture, which leads to fewer births. Then, with no immigration to fill the gaps, the workforce shrinks. The economy gets weaker, which puts even more pressure on the next generation, and the spiral just keeps going down. So the real question we're left with is this. Is Japan on a path of a gentle, managed decline, or are we watching the rapid unraveling of a nation? The data suggests the current path isn't a slowdown. It's a structural collapse in motion. And it's forcing a fundamental and probably painful rethink of what it even means to be a nation in the 21st century.